Hi, I'm Sophie from Encodian, and today I'm going to be taking you through one of Flowr's new AI actions called Process Receipt. So let's take a look at the solution. So for the solution today, I'm using Dataverse as my data storage. I'm using a Canvas app to show receipt data and for us to be able to upload new receipts. And I'm using a Power Automate flow in the backend to process any uploaded receipts. So in Dataverse, I'm using two Dataverse tables, one called receipts and one called receipt items. So receipts will be the parent table in this relationship, and it will contain the main information about the uploaded receipt. Receipt items contains the receipt line item data. So if you ordered a hamburger and chips, that would be the hamburger and chips information being stored there. So the reason I've had to set this as two different tables and do a many-to-one relationship is because there can be many receipt items per receipt. So the receipts table will store information such as the restaurant, the price, the date, whereas receipt items will actually contain those individual items that you purchased that go on the receipt. So this is my Canvas app. I've got a gallery here showing the receipt items. So this is hooked up to the receipts table, that parent table in Dataverse. I'm doing a filter here so that I can only see any receipts that I've uploaded. Within the gallery, I've got a few text boxes. So I've got one showing the name or the ID of the uploaded receipts, the merchant name, so the name of the restaurant, the transaction date, and the receipt total. So that just shows some high-level information about the receipt. I can go ahead and open the receipt. So this arrow here is going to select the parent and then navigate to the View Receipt screen. We'll have a look at this screen once we've uploaded our new receipt. This button here allows us to add a new receipt and it will take us to the image screen. So for the solution today, we're going to be providing images of our receipts. So that means we can take an image of the receipt from the Canvas app, or we can upload an image of a receipt that's already been taken. I'm not going to go into the functionality of how to upload or take a picture in a Canvas app in this video. However, I have already covered this in a separate blog and video, so I'll add the link below if you'd like to have a look at how this has been set up in the app. So I'm going to go ahead and upload my receipt image. Once I've uploaded the image, we can see that it's visible here. And then I'm going to go ahead and click Save. So what Save is doing, it's patching this as a new row. So that new row at the moment is only going to contain the receipt ID because it's an auto number field, and it will contain the uploaded receipt image that we're patching now. The rest of the data is going to be filled in later from the Power Automate flow, because the Power Automate flow is what's going to actually extract the data from this receipt and then save that back to the same Dataverse row that we're creating now. So we're going to create a new row in the receipt table with this uploaded image. I'm then going to reset my Add Media button to reset the upload image control, and I'm going to navigate back to the home screen. So now that I'm back on the home screen, we can see that the newly added receipt is here. However, there's no data that's been provided yet. So as mentioned, this is because all we've patched is the image. So we need to wait for the flow that's now been triggered automatically in the backend to run to extract the data from the receipt image and then save that back to Dataverse. So if I refresh the data, we can now see that this has been populated. So that means the backend flow has been completed and the new data that's been exported from that receipt image has now been added. So let's open this up and go to the view screen. So this is what the receipt details screen looks like. I've got a Power Apps form being used on the top half here, which contains, as mentioned, those kind of overall details about the receipt. We've got the merchant name, address, the subtotal, the total tax, and the total of the bill. I do actually have some hidden fields in this form. So receipts will vary from merchant to merchant, which means there's going to be different information available on different receipts. Some receipts may not contain total tax, for example. If the total tax field was empty, we wouldn't want to display it in the form here because it's taking up space and not containing any data. So, to incorporate for this, if I select this data card, for example, and if I come to visible here, I've set an if statement on all of the receipt detail fields, saying that if the data card value is blank, hide the data card, whereas if the data card value contains data, show the data card. So this is going to dynamically change the form depending what receipt we're looking at. So if there's any blank values, the respective data card will be hidden. So we'll only be seeing fields that contain data. The receipt items are being added to the app using a table control. The items of the table control is what's looking at that child Dataverse table. So we're looking at the receipt items table. I'm doing a filter here to the receipt items table so that we're only bringing back receipt items for the selected receipt that we're looking at. So to do this, I can do filter, receipt items, and the filter query is receipt.receipts because in the receipt items Dataverse table, we're using a lookup field to look up that row to the parent record. So we're going to be doing receipt.receipts because this is going to give us the parent record GUID. So we can compare this to receipt gallery, which is the gallery on the home screen in our Canvas app, dot selected, because we need the selected record, dot receipts, because that's going to be that GUID of the selected record. So we're comparing the two GUID values here, so that we're only bringing back receipt items that are related to the selected receipt. From here, I'm showing the receipt item description, the quantity, and the total price. So if I zoom in on this so we can have a look, we can see that we've got all of these receipt items. I've also got this view receipt button here, which is going to allow us to actually view the uploaded image. Because we're extracting this data with AI, it's really important to be able to compare it to the receipt that was uploaded in case the AI has made any mistakes when extracting the data. And we're looking at this variable called var show receipt. So var show receipt is what's going to control the container that's going to show the uploaded receipt image. So the reason this is being controlled here and this is being used in this if statement is because this same button is also going to close that container too. So we're using one button to control the visibility of the container. So here we're checking if var show receipt is equal to true, which means that the picture of the receipt will be visible. As we can see from the app screen, at the moment this is false. So if this is false, we'll be setting var show receipt to true. However, if the receipt was already visible on the screen, var show receipt would already be set to true, which means that if we wanted to close it down, we would be setting var show receipt to false. So I'm going to open this up now, and this is what this is showing. I have a container control here called con receipt image, and within that container, I'm actually showing the image control. You may have noticed as well, this now doesn't say view receipt, it says close receipt. So we're also dynamically changing the text here, and this again is being controlled by the var show receipt variable. So if var show receipt is true, which means the screen's going to look like what it does now with the receipt image showing, we're going to show the text close receipt. However, if var show receipt is false, we're going to show the text view receipt. Because we're saving the images in Dataverse, we need to ensure that we're bringing back through the full size images and not just the image thumbnails that Dataverse is going to try and pull back into the app. If you pull back the thumbnail, so if you did, I'll show you on the screen. If you did the thumbnail, so if you did the receipt gallery dot selected dot receipt image, as you would when you're showing any other data from the selected record from the gallery, we can see that this is not the full size image. It's blurry, it cuts off half the receipt. This is not what we want to display in our app. So we can get the full size image using the actual Dataverse stored link of the image. Using this link is going to bring us back that clear full size image, the same quality that we uploaded. So you can get this image by using this link here that I've shown on the screen, and we just need to change the things in the boxes. So firstly, we need to change this to your environment URL where your app is residing. The next thing we need to change is the entity name, so add in the logical name of the entity where your image is stored. We then need to change the attribute name, so this is the logical name of the column where your image is stored. And lastly, the ID will be the GUID of the image you want to show. So for this is where we can use our gallery.selected.receipts, because that is the row that we're looking at, and that is the image we want to pull through. If you replace these values to match your own environment and your own table and columns, this will then pull through the full size downloaded image into your app. So if I put this into full screen now, we can compare this to the extracted data. So we can see the merchant name was the tack room, the total was this, and these were the receipt items that have been added. So if I close the receipt, we can see that the data has successfully been copied across and extracted and added into Dataverse. So that is the Canvas app. Let's have a look at the backend Power Automate that's actually doing this data extraction. So this is the Power Automate that's running in the backend. This Power Automate is automatically being triggered when we're patching that row to the receipts table. So when we are uploading that image and we're patching the image to the receipts table, we're adding a new row, and that's what's triggering off this Power Automate. The first thing we're doing is we're downloading a file or an image. So in this case, we're downloading an image. So I'm pointing this to the receipts table that triggered the flow. The column name in my case is receipt image. And really importantly, we need to open up the image size parameter and type in full. If you don't do this, it's going to download the thumbnail, even though that we're using a separate step to download the image. So it's just really important here that we're downloading the full image size, because this is the image that we're going to be providing into our Flowr AI action. So we want to make sure it's easily readable and that we're not cutting off any information. Once we've downloaded the image, we can then use the Flowr AI process receipt action. This is a pre-trained AI action, so all we need to do is provide the file content of the receipt, which is going to be the output of the download a file or image action. The data that we get out of the Flowr action is going to be in a string format, so we need to use a parse JSON so we can easily get the extracted data. As mentioned when we were looking through the app, every receipt that you're going to receive and upload is going to be different. So we need to account for all of the extracted data when we're parsing the JSON, even though the receipt that we're processing may have blank values for that piece of data. This allows the flow to be dynamic, and it's not going to cause failures if a field is missing on a receipt that you upload. So to do this, in my parse JSON schema I'm providing here, I'm not providing any required values. So not providing any required values at the bottom here will ensure that if data is missing from one of these fields, the action won't fail. Once we've got the extracted data, I can then update the row in Dataverse. So I'm using the receipts ID from the trigger action here. And again, to make sure that this flow is dynamic, I'm using the coalesce action, because if the value I'm trying to provide to this field is blank, I'm just going to provide null into Dataverse. So this means if any data is missing from any of these fields, again, the flow is not going to fail at this step. it's just going to pass a null value back to Dataverse. So this is going to ensure that the flow is dynamic for each receipt that's uploaded. One thing to note as well is that any number columns in Dataverse that you may expect to be added as maybe a currency or an integer, I've actually put these in the Dataverse table as strings. And this is again to help the solution be more dynamic. The reason I've added these column fields as strings is because when the data is extracted from a receipt, sometimes there'll be a £sign or a $sign that gets extracted. Sometimes the quantity isn't just the number 1, it's a times 1. So if your data is being extracted like that and you have number fields, so if your data is being extracted from the receipt like that and you have number fields and your Dataverse columns, the flow will also fail because you're providing the wrong data type into those columns. Of course, you could do further processing in the Power Automate to detect when this is happening and convert these items into integers or into currency. However, I've not done this in this solution today. If you're providing strings into the Canvas app as well, you can also do formatting at the Canvas app level to make sure these are being formatted as decimals and currencies there too. Once I've updated the receipts table, I then need to go ahead and update the receipt items table. So to do this, I'm looping through the extracted items from the receipt. So if we look at the output from the parse JSON action, we can see that the receipt items have been extracted as a nested JSON array. This means that we can go ahead and do an apply to each to that extracted JSON array, and we can loop through this and add each item as a new row to the receipt items table. So this is the data I'm adding into receipt items. I'm adding in the receipt description, the quantity. I'm using this formula here because the receipts field is a lookup to the parent receipts table. So this is how I can add data to a lookup field when adding a new row into Dataverse. And lastly, I'm adding the total price. The reason I'm not using a coalesce for the description and the quantity is because the description and the quantity is going to be there on a receipt every time, because if there's no description or quantity, there'll be no receipt item. However, I could also add the coalesce function here too. So that is the Power Automate flow. We're using Flowr's AI process receipt action to actually extract the data from the uploaded image. We're then parsing the outputs of that so that we can get to that extracted data. And then we're just adding that data back into Dataverse. So the solution today has shown you how you can build a simple Canvas app to be able to upload or take images of receipts, and using Power Automate and Encodian Flowr in the backend, actually extract the data from those images and then save it back into Dataverse. Of course, you could extend this solution to make it more into an expense management scenario. As always, if you have any questions about anything you've seen today, please leave me a comment down below or get in touch with us at Encodian. And as always, happy automating.